The night that shattered boundaries, a forbidden tale of desire and family. Have you ever experienced a moment so intense it turned your world upside down? A decision that lingered in your mind, pulling at your conscience, challenging everything you believed to be right. My name is Ashley, and this is the story of the night that forever changed my life, my family, and my understanding of love and morality. It started innocently enough in our picturesque Nashville home, a haven of laughter and family dinners. But beneath the surface of that perfect image was a tension so thick it simmered for 2 long years. My stepbrothers, Robert and Brian, handsome, magnetic, and impossibly close, were more than just family. Their glances lingered a second too long. Their touches sparked feelings I couldn't ignore. And then came that stormy evening. With our parents away, we found ourselves alone. A fragile trio standing on the edge of a precipice. Thunder roared outside, but the real storm brewed within our hearts. What happened that night wasn't just a crossing of lines, it was an explosion of everything we had tried to bury. This isn't a story of simple love or desire. It's about boundaries broken, lives forever altered, and the price of giving in to temptation. If you think you've heard it all, let me take you back to the night it all began. Hi, I'm Ashley, and I have a story that flipped my quiet Nashville life upside down. Before I share, let me ask, have you ever made a choice so irreversible it changed everything? This isn't a regular family story. It's about a night with my stepbrothers, Robert and Brian, that redefined us forever. I was 20 when it happened. Standing before my bedroom mirror, I could hear their footsteps in the hallway. My heart raced, knowing 2 years of unspoken tension was about to reach its breaking point. Our sprawling Nashville home was perfect on the outside, wraparound porch, manicured lawn, but it hid secrets. My father's marriage to Karen brought her twin sons, Robert and Brian, into my life. At first, it seemed ideal. Robert, with his intense dark eyes, and Brian, with his charming smile, were 23 and impossible to ignore. But the way they looked at me wasn't sibling-like. Have you ever felt that forbidden pull towards someone you're not supposed to want? The kind of attraction you hide, hoping it'll fade. But it only grows stronger. Our parents were proud of how well we all got along, blind to the tension simmering beneath the surface. Lingering touches, silent stares, and electrified moments filled our family dinners. Then came the stormy night that changed everything. Rain battered the windows, mirroring my emotions as I descended the stairs. Robert and Brian waited in the living room, their gazes intense, the air heavy with unspoken truths. Robert leaned back on the couch, his eyes daring me to close the gap. Brian stood near the mantel, his usual smile replaced with something unreadable. Their presence felt different, bolder. I hesitated in the doorway, torn between retreating to my room or stepping into the unknown. But deep down, I knew I'd been waiting for this moment just as much as they had. Have you ever found yourself caught between desire and morality? Between what your heart wants and what society says is right? I never meant for this to happen. But sometimes the most intense connections form where they're least expected. That night changed everything. It all began when I was 18. And Dad announced he was marrying Karen. She makes me happy, Ashley, he said, his eyes twinkling for the first time since Mom passed. I hoped this new chapter might bring peace to our family. But Karen wasn't coming alone, she had twin sons, Robert and Brian. At the engagement dinner, I met them for the first time. Robert, with his dark hair and piercing gaze, had a quiet intensity that was both captivating and unnerving. Brian, slightly taller, carried a charming warmth that made everyone around him feel at ease. Both were 23. Successful. And impossibly handsome, like characters from a storybook. When they hugged me hello, their cologne lingered on my sundress, leaving me breathless. I couldn't tell if the flutter in my chest was nerves or something deeper. The first few months were full of adjustments. Robert had a habit of appearing in doorways, watching me with an intensity that made my skin tingle. It wasn't intrusive, but it kept me hyper-aware of his presence, like an invisible thread connecting us. Brian, on the other hand, always seemed to find excuses to be near me. He'd offer to help with homework or suggest grabbing coffee. His accidental touches, a brush of fingers or a gentle hand on my shoulder, sent shivers down my spine. He made me laugh like I hadn't in years. His playful charm a welcome distraction from the challenges of blending families. What I didn't anticipate was how quickly my life would intertwine with theirs. Every glance, touch, and shared laugh felt like stepping closer to the edge of something thrilling yet dangerous. And even now, I wonder if I ever wanted to stop. Our house was spacious, yet it seemed designed to bring us together. Like that summer evening when I stepped out of the shower, wrapped in a towel, and collided with Robert in the hallway. His hand steadied me, his breath catching as our eyes met. Even now, I can feel the heat of his touch. Living together was a dance of unspoken tension. At family dinners, Brian's thigh would press against mine under the table, while Robert's jaw tightened as he watched. One evening, reaching for the salt, both brothers touched my hand at once. The air seemed to crackle, the moment heavy with something forbidden. Months turned into years, and the awkwardness of blending our families gave way to something far more dangerous. Robert worked out shirtless in the gym, his smirk daring me to look. Brian's nightly hugs lingered, his whispered goodnights sending shivers down my spine. Our parents were thrilled by our closeness, oblivious to the undercurrent of tension. Family game nights tested our restraint, especially Twister. Robert's muscles flexed as he reached past me. Brian's breath tickled my neck as we tangled together. Each accidental touch felt deliberate, each glance charged. We were family, but every interaction defied that label. For 2 years, the tension built, a storm waiting to break. One stormy night, our parents away, the power went out. Candles lit the living room as we huddled together. Brian broke the silence, confessing feelings he could no longer hide. Robert's reaction was instant, his anger revealing his own unspoken emotions. The walls we'd constructed crumbled, and the storm outside was nothing compared to the one inside. By morning, everything had changed. Some lines, once crossed, can never be redrawn. The summer before everything changed, our parents planned a family vacation to the beach. It felt like a break from routine, but looking back, it was the beginning of everything shifting. Being away from home does something to people, makes them different, less guarded. The beach house was stunning, with 4 bedrooms and a deck overlooking the ocean. Brian convinced everyone that we kids should take the upper floor, leaving our parents downstairs, comfortably out of earshot. That left me just steps away from both brothers, separated by paper-thin walls. Each morning, I woke to the sound of Robert working out on the deck outside my window. Through the curtain, I could see him, his muscles flexing in the sunlight. His skin glistening with sweat. Sometimes, our eyes would meet through the glass. His gaze always lingered too long, making my heart race until I had to look away. Brian, ever persuasive, decided to teach me to surf. He spent hours with me, his hands steadying my waist as he positioned me on the board. "You're a natural," he'd whisper, his breath warm against my ear. The waves crashing around us. Sometimes, his hands lingered a moment too long, leaving my stomach fluttering. But it wasn't just their physical closeness. Robert became my confidant, spending hours helping me refine my college essays. His arm brushed mine as we worked, his voice steady and encouraging. Brian, meanwhile, brought us coffee, his fingers grazing mine during each handoff. His touches were fleeting, but they sent shivers down my spine. That summer, everything felt heightened: the ocean, the sun, the quiet tension that hovered between us. It was the calm before the storm, the prelude to a shift that would change everything. One night during that beach vacation, I had a nightmare and, without thinking, knocked on Robert's door. He opened it, shirtless and groggy. "Can't sleep?" he asked, pulling me into a hug that felt anything but brotherly. We sat on his bed, talking in hushed tones as dawn approached. When Brian walked in, the look he gave Robert was a mix of confusion and suspicion. Back home, our interactions became charged with unspoken tension. They'd take turns driving me to school, each vying for my attention. Robert would adjust my seatbelt, his knuckles grazing my collarbone. Brian would play with my hair at red lights. Movie nights were no better, sandwiched between them on the couch. I became hyper-aware of Robert's arm brushing my shoulder and Brian's fingers tracing patterns on my knee. The day I received my college acceptance letter, they threw me a private celebration. Brian cooked dinner, and Robert decorated the den. They brought champagne, calling it our secret. As the evening progressed, Brian pulled me up to dance, spinning me until I fell back against Robert's chest. For a moment, the three of us stood there, the air thick with unspoken tension. That night, I knew we had crossed a line, one we might never be able to uncross. Have you ever gone too far, knowing you shouldn't have but feeling deep down that it was already too late to turn back? That stormy evening started innocently enough. There I was, in our kitchen, preparing dinner while thunder rolled outside. Our parents were away at a business conference in Chicago, and I had promised to make my famous pasta for Robert and Brian. "Need any help?" Robert's voice startled me as he leaned against the doorframe, his dark eyes following my movements. The kitchen suddenly felt smaller, warmer. Moments later, Brian appeared, rolling up his sleeves. "Can't let you do all the work, sis," he said, smiling as he reached for the wine glasses, his arm brushing mine. Robert chopped vegetables while I stirred the sauce. Brian opened a bottle of red wine, pouring 3 glasses. "To family," he toasted, his eyes holding mine over the rim of his glass. The evening unfolded with a surreal energy, each moment laced with an unspoken tension. Dinner was a dance of glances and fleeting touches. Brian told jokes that made me laugh too hard while Robert's intense gaze sent shivers down my spine. After dinner, Brian suggested movie night. It was tradition, but tonight felt different. The storm had knocked out most channels, leaving only our old DVDs. The living room was dimly lit, shadows flickering with each flash of lightning. I settled on the couch, acutely aware of Robert and Brian on either side of me. The movie played, but I couldn't focus. Every thunder crash made me jump, and each time, their hands found mine, offering comfort that felt anything but familial. "Cold," Robert murmured as I shivered. Brian quickly draped a blanket over us, drawing our bodies closer together under its warmth. The storm outside howled, but the storm within me was louder, more insistent. The proximity was overwhelming, blurring lines I thought were unshakable. The room seemed smaller, the air thick with unspoken words. Robert's hand lingered on mine, his touch feather-light but meaningful. Brian leaned in slightly, his breath warm as he whispered, "You okay?" His voice steady, yet his eyes betrayed a whirlwind of emotions. Lightning illuminated their faces, revealing expressions that made my heart race and my mind spin. Every glance, every touch felt like a dare to step closer to the edge. And there I was, teetering, caught in a moment that would change everything forever. The movie's dialogue faded into background noise, overtaken by the drumming of rain against the windows. Robert's thumb traced soft circles on my shoulder, his touch laced with meaning. Under the blanket, Brian's hand rested precariously close to mine, his warmth radiating through the fabric. The air was charged with unspoken words, as thick and electric as the storm raging outside. Thunder crashed, sharp and jarring, and the lights flickered once before plunging us into darkness. The TV went black, and for a moment, the room seemed suspended in stillness. Then, lightning flashed, illuminating their faces, intense, expectant. My heart raced as I felt them shift closer, their presence pressing in on me from both sides. "Maybe we should light some candles," I whispered, unsure if I was suggesting it to break the tension or distract myself from it. "Stay," Robert murmured, his voice low, his breath warm against my ear. Brian's hand brushed against mine, and before I could pull away, his fingers closed around mine, sending a jolt through me. My pulse quickened, caught between them, like a ship caught in opposing currents. "Ashley," Brian said my name softly, almost reverently, breaking the silence that hung heavy between us. In the next flash of lightning, I saw the look in his eyes, a mirror of the longing I saw when I turned to Robert. My breath hitched. Have you ever wanted something so badly that resisting felt like it might break you? That's how it felt in that moment. The tension between us was almost unbearable, a fragile thread stretched to its breaking point. Robert's hand moved to cup my face, his touch hesitant yet tender. Brian's fingers tightened around mine, grounding me in the chaos of emotions I couldn't contain. The line we'd been tiptoeing around for 2 years was right there, so close I could feel its weight. That moment in the dark, with the storm raging outside, would change everything. The storm raged outside, but the true tempest was inside the living room. Sometimes, the most dangerous storms brew within us, waiting for the perfect moment to erupt. This was that moment. Lightning illuminated the room, revealing not just our faces but everything we had tried to bury. The thunder masked my racing heart, yet I knew they could feel its rhythm. Have you ever felt it? I whispered. That moment when your world shifts, and everything you thought you knew about yourself changes in an instant. Brian's hand tightened around mine as Robert stepped closer, his presence overwhelming. "We shouldn't," I murmured. But my body betrayed me. I leaned into Robert's caress, his fingers trailing along my jawline with agonizing tenderness. "We've been fighting this for 2 years," Brian murmured, his voice low and charged. The weight of his words pressed against me, making the air feel heavier. Robert's thumb brushed my lower lip, sending shivers through me. His touch was deliberate, daring. "Tell us to stop," he challenged. "Tell us you don't feel this too." Another flash of lightning revealed their intensity, their eyes burning with unspoken desire. The storm outside paled in comparison to the chaos inside me. My reason faltered, swept away by a longing I could no longer deny. Have you ever wanted something so fiercely that it consumes you, obliterating logic and restraint? That was what I felt now, an unrelenting, forbidden need. That's how it felt as Robert's lips finally found mine, soft yet demanding, carrying a mix of hesitation and hunger, while Brian's hands tangled in my hair. Time seemed to fragment, each second stretching unbearably as sensations flooded my body. Robert's lips pressed with more confidence, only to retreat and make way for Brian, who turned my face toward him with a consuming heat that left me breathless. My mind screamed that this was wrong. But my body betrayed me, igniting with a fiery intensity one had never experienced before. They took turns tasting my lips, one soft and searching, the other bold and commanding. "We've imagined this so many times," Robert murmured against my neck, his voice low and rough. Brian's fingers traced lazy, tantalizing patterns across my shoulder. The room pulsed with unspoken desires, the air thick with a heat that made it hard to breathe. Lightning flickered through the windows, illuminating their faces, intense, flushed, and unguarded. Minutes blurred into a symphony of sensations. Hands wandered, breaths mingled. Every touch, every kiss, felt like a line being crossed, lines we all knew couldn't be uncrossed. None of us cared in the moment. There was only the pull of the forbidden, the intoxicating thrill of surrendering to something we had fought so hard to suppress. 40 minutes. That's how long the spell lasted. Have you ever been caught in something so intense, so consuming? That time itself seemed to pause. For 40 minutes. There was no world beyond this room. No obligations. No rules, only us. But reality has a cruel way of intruding. A car door slammed outside, followed by the sweep of headlights cutting through the storm. The sound shattered the fragile, feverish bubble we had built. We sprang apart, breaths uneven. Robert's eyes darted to the window, his expression tense, while Brian's hand hovered near mine, unwilling to fully let go. "It's just the neighbors," Robert muttered after a moment. But the spell had been broken. The passion that had consumed us now felt precarious, like a fragile vase on the edge of a table, one wrong move from shattering. I stood on unsteady legs, fumbling to adjust my rumpled clothes. The weight of what we had done settled heavily in my chest, suffocating and inescapable. We can't," I managed, though my voice wavered. My body ached to return to their embrace, but my mind screamed at me to run. Brian's gaze softened. "We're supposed to be family," he said quietly, the words laced with anguish. "Family doesn't feel like this." His voice broke on the last word, and something in me cracked at the raw vulnerability in his eyes. Robert didn't speak, but his silence was deafening. His dark eyes burned with unspoken emotions. A tempest of longing and guilt that mirrored my own. He stepped forward. Then stopped. His hands curling into fists at his sides. I need to go. I stammered. And then I fled. I fled up the stairs to my room, leaving them in the darkness below. My heart pounded. My lips still tingling. My mind racing. I pressed my back against the door, breathing hard, trying to make sense of the chaos swirling inside me. That night, the storm outside was nothing compared to the storm raging within these walls. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to the rain pounding against the windows. The house felt too small, the walls too thin, as if the weight of what had happened could barely be contained. On either side of my room, I knew Robert and Brian were just as sleepless, wrestling with the same forbidden desires and impossible choices. Sometimes, the most intense desires are the ones we can never fully act on. That night changed everything. It redefined our relationships, shattered the fragile balance of our family dynamic, and forced us to confront truths about ourselves we had been too afraid to face. There was no going back. Looking back, that stormy evening wasn't just about crossed boundaries, it was a turning point that forever reshaped who I am. It wasn't the desire or passion that lingered, but the lessons learned from the chaos we created. The price of giving in to temptation wasn't just guilt, it was the silent destruction of the family we had worked so hard to build. Robert, Brian, and I would never look at each other the same way again. What once felt magnetic became unbearable. Each glance a reminder of choices we couldn't undo. Over time, we drifted apart. Not out of hatred, but out of necessity. Some wounds need distance to heal. And some lines, once crossed, leave scars too deep to ignore. From this, I've learned the importance of setting boundaries and valuing trust. No fleeting moment of passion is worth the long-term damage it can inflict. Family is a bond built on respect. And breaking that foundation often means losing something irreplaceable. To anyone standing on the edge of a similar decision, let me be clear, stop and think about what you're risking. One impulsive act can echo through years of your life, affecting everyone you care about. The thrill will fade, but the consequences may never truly leave you. Thank you for taking the time to listen to my story. If it has resonated with you or given you perspective, I hope you carry its lessons forward. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button and join me on this journey to uncover more stories and reflections. Together, we can navigate life's storms and come out stronger.